https://vd.ninja/question_mark /vd_solo_corri.
It have a lot of women just like me who might be not too well off financially. You need a job and you really need it bad. A man decide to help you must feel glad. But if you value yourself as a woman, you will demand respect from the vagabonds. Stand up to them and let them know the truth. It's what you
Loud
want
and
to win
clear.
up thinking
Loud and clear.
you have a mood on your back they want to see. They want to see if you are marks on your belly. They want to know how much man you had before, and if you're strong enough to take any more. I have my pride and I have my ambition. I want to hold my head up high as a woman. So brother, they go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity. You want to help to mind your family. You want to help your man financially. But nowadays it's really very hard to get a job as a girl in Trinidad. You're looking out to find something to do. You meet a boss man who promised to help you. But when the man laid down the condition, nothing else but humiliation. You want to see your whole anatomy. You want to see where your doctor never see. You want to do what your husband never do. Still you will know if the scams will hire you. Well, if it's all this humiliation to get a job these days as a woman, brother, they go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity.
Capra calls for end to actions against Alyssa Phillip. But activist Alyssa Phillip and her mother Camille Carrasquero arrested during Labor Day celebrations in Fyzabad last Friday. Social media. The Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action Trinidad and Tobago, CAFR-TT, has expressed concern over the arrest of activist Alyssa Phillip during Labor Day celebrations in Fyzabad, describing the incident as a troubling development for freedom of expression and assembly. In a media release issued on Saturday, CAFR-TT said it was deeply alarmed by events that unfolded during this year's Labor Day activities, a day it described as one traditionally dedicated to honoring workers' struggles for dignity, fair working conditions and recognition of their contributions to national development. The organization said Labor Day has historically provided a platform for citizens to protest, assemble publicly and call for accountability from the state. CAFR-TT said women's organizations have participated in the annual Fyzabad March for years because they view labor justice as closely linked to peace, equality and equitable development. The group also raised concerns over reports that some people were prevented from joining the march because they were not trade union members. On what legal basis were citizens prevented from walking on a public street during a public march? And why now? The organization asked. CAFR-TT said the reports raised serious questions and suggested the possibility of targeted reprisal. The organization also pointed to a video circulating on social media that appeared to show more than 20 police officers in riot gear surrounding and detaining two women during the celebrations. CAFR-TT questioned the level of force used and said both women were unarmed and exercising their constitutional rights. This is not the first time that Alyssa Phillip has been arrested, and we note that each of her arrests has been linked to her calls for police transparency, accountability and access to justice, the organization said. CAFR-TT argued that the incident could be viewed as an attempt to intimidate not only Phillip but also others who question the effectiveness or accountability of the police service. The organization praised Phillip and her mother for what it described as their courage and commitment to justice. Today we call on the state to end its punitive actions against Alyssa Phillip. We make this call not only for her but for all of us who live in Trinidad and Tobago and who understand that down this road, the road of unchecked power and the suppression of dissent, is a threat to our rule of law and democracy, CAFR TT said. The organization added that Labor Day should serve as a reminder of the importance of collective action and the need to protect citizens' rights. CAFR TT is the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, a regional non-profit organization that promotes social justice and the empowerment of women.
Yes indeed, yes indeed. A pleasant good night to all and sundry, east, west, north, south, central in Trinidad, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you at this point in time. I thought I will start there because we don't want to go down the slippery road, or put another way, to advise the government that whether advertently or inadvertently, whether by design or otherwise, that road has international and regional implications if Trinidad and Tobago is seen as a police state or developing to be a police state. You see, this is against a background that we have already gotten the humiliating designation of the sixth, I think, place on the earth not to be because of violence. And then some time ago, under, of course, the previous administration, we had the unfortunate designation as well of having per capita the most amount of terrorists in the Western Hemisphere. And having regard to the fact of the multiple states of emergency to address one singular problem, which is crime and criminality, certainly our best friends, whether it be the United States or Canada or any of our Caribbean or hemispheric or European friends, will certainly have concern out of necessity. You see, only yesterday we talked about the whole question of advisories against Trinidad and Tobago. But of course it was against another background, in that the UK took action in terms of a report, or as a result of a report that they collated, they developed, and again, does not augur well for Trinidad and Tobago internationally. We can have all the gas in the world. We can have all the other resources and attractiveness for foreign investment. But if it is our reputation is one of violence that can occur in the sphere of Russian roulette, I like to call it Russian roulette, where anytime somebody could meet their demise or loss of limb, etc., then it means that we have to do some serious introspection. I am saying this, we are saying this on the corridor out of an abundance of caution, and therefore monitoring of the various cohesive elements that are responsible for the maintenance of law, order, peace, and security, and to a lesser extent, but nonetheless important, economic advancement. We need to address this frontally. I cannot overemphasize that international focus on us for negative reasons is not a good thing for the future generations and for the future of Trinidad and Tobago. In spite of all of the achievements, in spite of all of the economic advancement, in spite of the potential, and therefore that must be addressed. You see, I'm saying so because there is existential evidence. There is precedent for that. The Filipino former president, he is now being carted, or should I say being wanted by the International Criminal Court for a kind of action in response to crime and criminality in his country that he thought was best, he thought was important because the Philippines is an independent sovereign state, just as Trinidad and Tobago. But there are certain things that you cannot do, and why this has philosophical and historic importance, and therefore we must address this situation frontally, lest we falter as everybody else in the past. You see, the Second World War, and while of course the League of Nations failed, consequential of the First World War, 1914 to 1918, the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, when, as a consequence of that, by 1948, we had the creation of the United Nations. It is that precise organization and the fundamental principles that brought it into being, stating that, listen, it is there to avoid future wars, but more importantly, outline certain fundamental human rights that is indelibly implanted in the human, let's say, experience or development, or more specifically, inalienably attributed to them. And whether you are an individual or a collective, you have those fundamental rights that must be respected. It was Ronald Reagan, I believe it was, who said that, listen, democracy requires that successive generations take care of it, monitor it, make certain, because that is government by the people, of the people, and for the people. But it is nestled in that fundamental human rights obligation of every one of us, every institution, and every government on the face of the earth of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, there are those who have breached that, but the fact is, we have a duty here in Trinidad and Tobago to tell the government to be very, very careful, to tell the law enforcement agencies and those agencies that have guns and therefore can coerce people into doing things that they want them to do, that you too have to be careful as to how you execute your powers. It is said that power intoxicates and makes men giddy. It is also said that a power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is why you have these checks and balances built in into all of the systems. Whether at the level of government, you have the executive, you have the legislature, you have the judiciary, and you have us, the fourth pillar of democracy, which of course is monitoring everybody. And so it is important so that not so sightly scene of the overwhelming power of the state, the police, on those two harmless women, clearly no threat to the peace and security, no indication of they are going to disrupt the march. And of course, nestled in tradition, as the article would have said, we have to be very careful. But more importantly, when women are targeted or women are so engaged, we have to be even more concerned. So out of an abundance of caution, I thought we should engage the population, the callers, etc. We still have the same problem like yesterday. I tried my best today to try to see if we can solve it, but we have a show to go on, and we will damn well make it happen. So a pleasant good night to you, Mr. COP. Having, of course, made that introductory remark, I'm sure that you will have your own views on these and other matters that you will want to present to the population here, regionally, and abroad. Pleasant good night to you.
Good night to you, Lennox Smith, and good night to your family. Josh, good night to you. Good night to all the listeners and viewers of the Corridor Transformation. Good night, and welcome. We always come a little late, a little bit, but nothing wrong with that.
Yes,
Excuse us for that.
Better late than never, they say.
But Lennox Smith, when I see these kind of things, it really disturbs me as a human being. Especially when somebody do have a weapon on the hand, but they have the weapon of words. And especially, we have to understand the Constitution too. people rights, freedom of speech, especially when you're standing up for what you believe in, and I classify it as independent views. Um, Malcolm X was locked up that same way. Nelson Mandela was locked up that same way. Kwame Ture was locked up that same way. All the black freedom fighters was locked up that same way. And what they were standing up for, equal rights and justice, freedom of speech, freedom to assembly, freedom for opportunity. And that is what this girl really standing up, and she wasn't cussing, she wasn't being rude, she was telling the population and telling those in authority her freedom. And speaking out is not being rude. And following the law is not being disrespectful. That's what she was doing. And to see, in my view, to see all these police with all these riot gears and especially when one of the union leaders who mentioned that I invite her to come and walk with me over here. She was walking with me in our batch of people. When you really watch, all she do is just say, "Oh, leave me alone, let me march. I want to walk," and walk away. And when male police officer was going to hold her hand, she said, "No, where's the female officer? She wants a female." And they went and grabbed her. They went and grabbed a young lady who was standing up for what she believed in. She never went and thief. She never hit nobody. I never even used, she used obscene language. She wasn't resisting arrest to say she pulling away and running or any kind of thing. She mother was holding she around, she barely saw like a popo. And she was walking. Them things to me, it's sad. It's sad, but in life those things take place. And you have to understand right from wrong. In my view, Lennox, the police officers is to protect and serve. First responsibility is to protect and serve. And protecting and serving is not detaining somebody when they're practicing their rights. And the only excuse we have is we are in a state of emergency. That's the only excuse we have, we are in a state of emergency. And if OWT and all them other people them cannot march, why she couldn't march? Why she couldn't march if everybody else I could have go down there and march? You could have go down there and march? Stuart Young and all of them could have go down there and march? The whole of the PNM could have go down there and march. Nobody had also invited anybody to go down there and march.
Including off-duty police as well.
Yeah. And the police officers, what responsibility them have over there? To observe traffic and observe. That's what their responsibility over there. Nobody didn't go down there to fight and quarrel and pull gun for nobody and things. People went down over there, Labor Day to speak out. How much under the People's Partnership when the union wanted the People's Partnership out, and Keith Rowley and them end up on the platform, and the whole of the PNM political party march going down over there, say the worst about Kamala in Faizabad by Butler statue, say the worst. Nobody didn't lock up nobody. That girl was allowed in Avocat Junction to read she's speech. The commissioner of police shake she hand. And then somebody else locks she up. Them things, in my view, them things sad.
But again, I want to focus tonight's program on the international implication, you see, because many of them believe that their domestic action has no impact outside of Trinidad and Tobago. We are a sovereign state. We are a sovereign state. We are an independent state. We are a republic. And we can do what we want based on the institution that may be executing something that may well be ultra vires, may be obnoxious, may be immoral, may be unethical, may be offensive to international norms and standards. And we have to be careful. I cannot overemphasize. We have to be careful as a people and very conscious of the fact that people outside of us on whom we depend will, may, and can be monitoring Trinidad and Tobago. We saw that yesterday when we revealed in the report of the United Kingdom. They know they have ambassadors and embassies and emissaries here to do, among other things, to do their work for them, because it is about their interests, just as South Trinidad has its own interests. And it is not in Trinidad and Tobago's interests to have a belligerent, crime-infested, a war zone type society, because the world will know and we can easily become isolated, not deliberately, but by virtue of the actions from within. People will simply stay away, even though their mind is such to visit Trinidad and Tobago. And we saw why that may not qualify for what we are discussing. But I think the whole question of the blunder with Christmas, for example, because he came here to record and have recorded certain aspects of Trinidad and Tobago's life, the response of the law enforcement,
you record the reality of the PLM constituency.
Yeah, make people who didn't know end up knowing about Trinidad and Tobago, and that track record, as I said earlier, 6th in the world in terms of violence, an international report on that. Then you come
a land of 1.4 million people.
Yes, and then you have a situation where you are the number one country in the Western Hemisphere per capita for terrorists. So much so, and it was this Prime Minister in a previous incarnation as Prime Minister signed a convention with Obama and Jamaica at the United Nations to treat with international terrorism, because that is a reality, and I don't want this administration, of which I am a part, to fall into that slippery slope, having regard to what we have seen happen in the Philippines. The president there felt that he was doing all the things that are correct to address the crime situation there, but there were what I consider to be a very, not just unorthodox, but insensitive and reckless elements that started to believe that somehow they can kill, maim, and destroy and eliminate without consequences, because the president has a mission, a program of reducing or eliminating the criminal elements in that country. Well, today he's facing the International Criminal Court in the Hague, in the Netherlands. So let's not get carried away. Out of an abundance of caution, law enforcement, I caution the police commissioner to make sure that those elements who believe that the SOE gives them a free hand to do what they want, and I notice that they are eclectic and they know what to do, because in spite of the fact that there's an SOE that suspends a certain fundamental rights of the citizen, put another way, gives the police a certain amount of authority, otherwise that they will not have, and they have to go through certain processes, particularly involving the judiciary. I want to say the arrest of Hadid recently the owner of that water establishment, both in Trin City, and they of course executed what warrants at his home in Westmoreland, and that and the same at his business place. In other words, why didn't they under SOE just go in? Because they could have, but here it is. So they know what to do, but it depends on who it appears, and that is so conspicuous, it is so glaring, it is so obvious, it is so evident. I don't know how they can extricate themselves from being so, what I consider to be meticulous when coming to Hadid, but almost reckless when coming, of course, to ordinary persons, whether they are along the east-west corridor, Laverton, Beetham, Sealats, etc. You know, I must mention that. But I have seen, and they know it. Their conscience must be pricked in order for them to understand that the population is very, very observant and is commented on that differential of treatment. And more significantly, it suggested that you know what to do, but refuse to do it in certain circumstances where you feel that you can ride roughshod, and in other circumstances you are very, very meticulous and gingerly, and like as if you don't want to mash even eggshells, you are proceeding in a manner that will avoid repercussions for yourselves and for the victim, if you want to call it that. In this case, of course, the Hadids. I don't know if you, I'm raring to hear your comment on it. I want to tell people, boy, my phone dead. And we know you have to get to the phone, so I'm asking somebody in studio here to please, if you can charge it in the meantime.
Bring a charger and hook it up one time.
Yeah, bring a charger and see what you can do. But
you
I
can
was
bring
so
an
focused
extension
on
one
trying
time.
to get tonight's program going that I omitted to ask them to put it to charge, because we have to rely on it for calls. So I'm sure that people are calling in, but we may have to have a dialogue, monologue in a sense tonight, and I have no problems with that, because we are people who can adapt and adjust. So what's your view on the international implications for Trinidad and Tobago if we are deemed as a barbaric, brutal, heinous group of individuals, 1.5 million people alone, and of course we don't want to reach the level of Maduro and of course the 27 million that is strong, that is the population of Venezuela. Yes.
But Lennox, if we rank sixth in the world in heinous and barbaric actions, we can't get away from that. We done in the valley of heinous and barbaric activities in this country. But one thing you mentioned something there just now is that when the law dealing with the Hadid and them, they cannot even give the information, what they detain them for, what they arrest them for. They can't even speak to the public. But when they lock up these little girls and these little children and them, and citizens of this country, all in the East-West corridor, they could just stop them, detain them, lock them up for resisting. No criminal charges really, resisting and all these things. It's sad. It's sad because the Hadids are no different to this young girl or any other citizen in this country. The law is the law. The
Yeah,
law is the law.
The rule of law says
But
that all is subjected without exception.
it's not now foreign countries classifying Trinidad and Tobago as a lawless country and telling Americans which part to go and which part not to go. Every time the PNM in power, that happen. When the Americans will come and help us and tell us how much gangs we have in this country, the numbers, and when it start to grow, and who Because they come across the news tonight again. A next businessman, a next businesswoman who get locked up, and they say she was funding the one of the gang and all them things because it come across the news. You understand? We never see these people and them get locked up and thing, but this administration, the Attorney General, and remember they signed something with the national with national security US. When the US could be working with us over here and telling the government national security, check this name, check that name. Look what all the money coming in this bank and that, because the US have all those 21st century equipments. They have that. And if we could get that kind of assistance to bring down lawlessness in Trinidad and Tobago, why we will want, why the opposition and citizens of this country will want that type of assistance, that type of health to make our country go better. Why? Well, that is one of the greatest set of representation we getting right now from this administration, especially to fight the crime.
Yes.
No little man, don't have them opportunities and them kind of money to bring down all these kind of things, all these tons and make sure it comes through in Trinidad. It's big people in fall, the big white fish and them. What is call them, the big fish and them? Well, I say the big white fish. I say the big white fish.
Well, I'll stop at big fish.
Yeah.
I would describe the fish. I
And
would
when
say
he-
what color the fish is. Yes.
Well, I go say salmon there. Well, I go say a salmon there, a white salmon there.
I hear you.
When you look at, we never see those things happening. One of the best things I see happen under this administration is working with the United States to bring accountability and transparency in this country. I give them 10 out of 10 for that. And one of the things I will ask the national security, I'll tell national security, we give you all a lot of money. Taxpayers give you all kind of $5, $6, $7 billion a year. Not to brutalize people, not to lock up a little young girl like that and say for resisting and them kind of thing. We're not paying for that. Or look at her detain the young lady and put she in an office and sit down and talk to she as a father, as a mother, and speak to the parents and let them know, well, why you look here come out in the road like this? And why you look here do these things under a SOE? And under the ICDs, they still have the rights to do that because that was a marching day. But they could have been, she could show more leniency towards the needy.
Yeah, it was as if they were targeted, that particular group or those individuals. That's
And
what
so
they were
wrong then.
targeted. And overwhelming force, riot gear, etc. Not even when the pushback at the savannah was attacked by the police with the only thing they didn't have there, in my view, was of course tear gas, but it was reminiscent of what transpired there in the savannah, but the big difference is it's only about 2 or 3 or 4. Well, 2 persons were targeted, and I'm sure just as how they weren't able to garner a large crowd at the airport for the arrival back into Trinidad of the person who was charged in the Joshua incident. I'm sure that a very minuscule following they would have had, maybe a sprinkling of persons. Why then risk Trinidad and Tobago's profile as being a barbaric, hostile, a brutal society by law enforcement agents, attributed to law enforcement agents or the agency, in such a circumstance when your job is to have the vision, have the foresight to know that your actions, as you saw with Christmas, will have that kind of negative implication for Trinidad and Tobago, unless, and while of course I am in the realm of speculation and deep speculation, unless it's deliberate and people don't care. People don't care in that way, that level of, and if that is the case, I'm saying if that is the case, I'm not confirming nor denying, but if that is the case, then where is the patriotism? Where is the love for Trinidad and Tobago? What about the future of Trinidad and Tobago? And of course, all of those personnel, I assume, would have had children or family, etc. And when they would have gone, those will have that generation. There will be succeeding generations that have to live right here in Trinidad, because once people like Trump is in the United States, you catch your aunt and otherwise to get to the United States with the frequency that was the case maybe a decade or two ago. So I just thought it was important to let law enforcement in particular, of course I am referring to all the coercive institutions, including the army that will work in patrol with the police, to be conscious that the world is also looking on, and Trinidad and Tobago will lose opportunities if these kinds of acts become so frequent, as we saw with the concern as far as police-oriented or police, let's say, involved killings are concerned. Too much. I am a member of Amnesty International, and I have not, of course, reported anything to them, but I'm sure there are people out there who know of these institutions, who know of the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights. I am certain of all of that.
Alive and air here.
And therefore they will be looking at these issues and not give Trinidad and Tobago a free pass, because it is simply barbaric. It is unacceptable. Take note of the international focus on Trinidad and Tobago, particularly at this time, and you would know that you have to adjust and correct your behavior to suit the outcome for Trinidad and Tobago that will be salubrious, beneficial, and of course giving it the best advantage and opportunity to move forward, considering that generations are to come and to live here in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's play that piece again for those who just joined us. We are still having a problem with the telephone, so we have to, of course, may have to talk ourselves, and maybe we might finish COP at 9:30 today, because we don't have the callers to lengthen the program by necessity, because you know they have their issues to deal with. But let's go straight to the clip.
And you know I disconnect my line from my laptop.
And you know I disconnect my line.
Just give back
Yeah,
my
otherwise
laptop.
we could have called your number if you are so desired, and they could call your number, and I would naturally get what they are saying, and we respond appropriately. But all right, let's, that being as it may, let's work with the constraint we have. But listen to, of course, the issues that would have engendered this discussion tonight.
CAFRA calls for end to actions against Alyssa Phillip. By activist Alyssa Phillip and her.
CAFRA is the Caribbean feminist movement, so it's not just in Trinidad alone. I want to make certain that you understand what CAFRA means. CAFRA. Let's go back.
Lennox, let me just tell the listeners and viewers.
Let me just tell the listeners and viewers. The ones who want to.
Look at
Go on the chat and say what they have to say
Yeah,
on
and
the chat.
you will convey, because I don't watch the chat. The others watch the chat. I like to.
And it's just
deliver.
delete what I don't want to hear.
All right,
And it's just
okay.
delete what I don't
And
want
it's
to hear.
just delete what I want to hear.
Yes, okay, no problem.
And it's just-
So you do that. All right, that will be great, because Andy does that on the ground report. Notice I doesn't do it. All right, so let's go back. Let's start from the top.
CAFR calls for end to actions against Alyssa Phillip. By activist Alyssa Phillip and her mother Camille Carrasquero arrested during Labor Day celebrations in Fezzabad last Friday. Social media. The Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action Trinidad and Tobago, CAFR-TT, has expressed concern over the arrest of activist Alyssa Phillip during Labor Day celebrations in Fezzabad, describing the incident as a troubling development for freedom of expression and assembly. In a media release issued on Saturday, CAFR-TT said it was deeply alarmed by events that unfolded during this year's Labor Day activities, a day it described as one traditionally dedicated to honoring workers' struggles for dignity, fair working conditions and recognition of their contributions to national development. The organization said Labor Day has historically provided a platform for citizens to protest, assemble publicly and call for accountability from the state. CAFR-TT said women's organizations have participated in the annual Fezzabad March for years because they view labor justice as closely linked to peace, equality and equitable development. The group also raised concerns over reports that some people were prevented from joining the march because they were not trade union members. On what legal basis were citizens prevented from walking on a public street during a public march? And why now? The organization asked. CAFR-TT said the reports raised serious questions and suggested the possibility of targeted reprisal. The organization also pointed to a video circulating on social media that appeared to show more than 20 police officers in riot gear surrounding and detaining two women during the celebrations. CAFR-TT questioned the level of force used and said both women were unarmed and exercising their constitutional rights. This is not the first time that Alyssa Phillip has been arrested, and we note that each of her arrests has been linked to her calls for police transparency, accountability and access to justice, the organization said. CAFR-TT argued that the incident could be viewed as an attempt to intimidate not only Phillip but also others who question the effectiveness or accountability of the police service. The organization praised Phillip and her mother for what it described as their courage and commitment to justice. Today we call on the state to end its punitive actions against Alyssa Phillip. We make this call not only for her but for all of us who live in Trinidad and Tobago and who understand that down this road, the road of unchecked power and the suppression of dissent, is a threat to our rule of law and democracy, CAFR-TT said. The organization added that Labor Day should serve as a reminder of the importance of collective action and the need to protect citizens' rights. CAFR-TT is the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, a regional non-profit organization that promotes social justice and the empowerment of women.
Yes, indeed. I thought this song symbolizes the tragedy that women would have encountered over the years as they fight for their own independence, liberalization, and indeed dignity and pride. And so this, to me, is the epitome of what those two women experience on a day like Labor Day. But more significantly, I cannot overemphasize the regional and international implications that that kind of behavior or action by the coercive or the law enforcement agents that have guns, that have ammunition, that have manpower and woman power, and are protected by the law of the country, the laws of the country, and yet still will take a sledgehammer, as the saying goes, to kill our ants in this particular case, using, of course, that idiom or that maxim. I think it is important that we understand that. And this program tonight is about the international implication, because it has repercussions for investment, It has repercussions for human rights understanding and the chagrin or the disapprobation by the international community, because many countries today have been excommunicated from the international system because of actions such as this, though much more what I consider to be heinous, much more egregious. But they have been excommunicated. We could think about Cuba, we could think about Haiti, we could think about other countries on the African continent, and of course on the Asian continent as well. But the fact of the matter is that Trinidad and Tobago ought not and must do everything to eliminate and to eradicate and to avoid being so described or prescribed. COP is right. The damage has already been done. We are known. But as in every human circumstance, as indeed a country, remember at one time we were on the blacklist for not cooperating in terms of terrorist funding and indeed money laundering by that international organization based in France, the OECD, the Organization for Development and Cooperation, that says, listen, if you are engaged or you cannot meet a certain criteria to avoid money laundering in the interest of possibly terrorist activities, you will be cut off from the international banking and financial system. You can't get a loan to manage your affairs and to advance your country. That is what we were up against. The UNC ended up completing the process, but the PNM was unable so to do, and on many occasions had to go back to the drawing board because they didn't meet the criteria. We recently was inducted into that area of acceptance, moving off the gray list. So those are the things we are talking about, and the same thing for human rights violation. The same very thing. So we are not an island to ourselves. And in spite of the claim of independence and sovereignty, we are subjected to international norms, rules, and acceptable behavior. And as a small developing state, as a nation that is young, but has, of course, all the rights as every other state in the world, the reality is that we have to conform, and if we don't, we pay the price economically, socially, and all of the other negativities that could emerge from that, particularly foreign direct and indirect investment. You see, I'm saying so because I am concerned that if we limit ourselves to investment, inflows into Trinidad and Tobago, then the target of becoming fully employed, having full employment as a country, would be elusive and more difficult to achieve. I am saying so because the young man in Lavantil, East Port of Spain, Beetham, Sealat, as well as along the east-west corridor from Diego Martin in the west to and Carenage to, of course, Toco in the east. The longer it will take for the availability of jobs so that you can live a life that you would like to, or put another way, every Trinbagonian would like to live, because you can feed yourself, you can feed your family, and you can, of course, enjoy all the basics of every human being in terms of food, shelter, clothing, entertainment. That is what we are talking about. Last night we spoke about it from a different perspective in terms of the advisories Tonight we are talking about the domestic conduct of law enforcement and those coercive, as I said, institutions that are responsible for the monitoring and the enforcement of the laws of the country. But you must do it in such a way that there is no implication and repercussions outside of Trinidad and Tobago, where countries and of which we are a part in terms of the international system, the international community must not recognize us as a being backward, as being barbaric, as being inhumane, as a being one that oppresses our population. We have been bombarded with those kinds of experiences, and we are still suffering from the repercussions of it, having regard to the experience in Venezuela. Some of their citizens are still here in spite of the improved circumstances there. But we know why they came here. Over 100,000 of them came because running from harsh treatment, barbaric and oppressive and economic disaster as a consequence because of sanctions and other excommunicative, as far as I'm concerned, measures that nations will take to bring correction to how the regime in Venezuela treated or was treating its citizens who had to flee. Too many of them not to be concerned, and too many of them not to destabilize the region as a whole, including Trinidad and Tobago. So, my friend, I think we cannot overemphasize the impact external to us, and the police have a duty and responsibility to be that conscious. What say you, COP?
I think that the national security and the police officers have a constitutional responsibility to show the world that in Trinidad and Tobago, they are transparent and not bullied. I think they are showing the world right now they are advantageous people. Because the world could watch it. The world could watch these videos and them. It have places in not in Trinidad but all over the world that the police can't even put their hand on that girl, can't even touch that girl. They can't even, without reasonable arrest, they can't even go close to she. They can't even ask she name. Otherwise they'll have to be held accountable. In Trinidad and Tobago, the police and them could ask your name without reasonable suspicion. And you have to answer them. And if you answer them, they go slap you down. They go beat you up. They go do all kind of things. Trinidad and Tobago need auditors to hold police officers accountable. The citizens of this country need to understand their rights. They need to understand the laws. They need to understand the amendment that they have. They need to understand how the police can approach you by law and how the police cannot approach you by law. They need to read and understand them. They need to understand the Constitution. And Trinidad and Tobago youths and them, they're not on that. The young ones not on that. But when I witnessed something in this country in Piccadilly Street some years ago. The police them in all riot gear, about 200 of them, and about 100 underage boys. I think they was walking down Piccadilly Street, and the police didn't want them to come. And them telling the police, you can't stop me from walking down here. This is we village. This is we home. And the police with big guns blocking them, and the little youths and them walking in front of the police, walking on until the police them had the back, keep backing back. They know they could not interfere with them. They know that's how the children and them rights to walk in the village and say, no, we don't want to have no discussion with all you. That is some of the rights that the citizens of this country have. Even if you see me breaking the law, You really don't have no rights to walk, come up to me and question me. And them thing, other countries like that.
Yeah.
The citizens
And
know
the
the
thing,
rights.
and the thing about it is they know it, but they
Yeah.
take the risk. They take the risk because they
They're
believe.
bullying.
Yeah, they believe that in certain communities there is no response capability. In other words, people looking to eke out a living so intensely that they had time to go to court, they had time to go to the magistrate court and what it would call take certain legal action against them. And of course, as we continue with this series, I will give you some experiences that I would have had and motivation and or encouragement for people to take action that is within their rights, having been infringed by either some agency, whether it be agency or whether it be the police, as the case may be. We need to edify and to focus along that line so people get a greater and deeper understanding as to their role and responsibility as citizens and as the role and responsibility as far as the law enforcement agencies is concerned. And let me tell you this, because you raised it earlier, so I think I need to expand that those kinds of high-handed actions deepens the distrust. It deepens the traditional antagonism between law enforcement and that of the community. But
Law
yet
enforcement
still,
and the population.
ironically, the public relations department of the police and those who are in the upper echelons and making decisions will always talk about they need the support and assistance of the public. Yet still, when
how do you get
like
that?
this occur so regularly, that how could you engender, how could you encourage, how could you expect the population in general to be cooperative in terms of providing information voluntarily so that you could really solve crime, you can prosecute, and you can have successful conviction? Go ahead, my friend.
Lennox Smith.
That is-
These stories are sad stories.
Yeah.
These stories are just really sad stories. We need somebody, some lawyers, even national security. We need the head of national security, National Security Council, to have some kind of organization or law to educate the population about the rights. It have certain countries, so the world and thing, like Florida and all these places and them. The police can, if the police stop them, the police have to tell them why you stop me on the road.
Yeah.
You have to
Reasonable
explain to
suspicion,
the, yeah,
reasonable suspicion, all of that. And that by itself is well established in law.
yes.
You
Can't ask me to come out of my car. You can't ask me to come out of my car. You gotta tell me what you want my license and insurance for,
Of course. And I saw just Friday gone, the police called in a record to move a particular vehicle. But I suspect the driver probably decided not to cooperate, and they decided that they should. And I saw in another country, however, by sheer chance, that an advocate was saying that if it's a vehicular matter, you can't take the people property just so.
A police officer, a police officer cannot even walk in somebody's property in foreign. They can be trespassed.
Yeah. And if they trespass and you tell them by way of obscenity, get the hell out of a place.
You could cuss them, you could tell them about
That's
their
right,
mother,
that's right,
you
that's
could be the most vulgar language towards them.
Of course,
And that's
because
freedom of speech.
you have violated my privacy, my castle. I suppose that is what that new piece of legislation is all about in terms of the principle that gave rise to it. My castle is my home, or my home is my castle, and therefore home invasion ought not to be something to take lightly, and therefore the provision of certain protection for the homeowner or for the property owner clearly was given force, because the law wasn't as clear as one could be. In other words, you are still subjected to the reasonable force principle before this piece of legislation. But if you believe that the situation merited a certain type of action that turned out under normal circumstances to be force that created maybe the loss of a limb or a life, then of course you have a certain degree of protection according to the new piece of law that has been put on the statute books in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's a lot we have to do. That's the point we are making. But I'm saying that the police can simply do now prevent, desist from making Trinidad and Tobago another focal point in another aspect of what is considered to be reprehensible by the international community on whom we depend. If we didn't depend on them, and none of us will make the stupid statement as a politician and should I say a member of government at one time would have made, talking about Camille Robinson Regis. Who the hell is Trump? But afterwards, when another person said the same thing, how the United States is a dump, that person couldn't face the polls again, because the PNM realized the folly of those kinds of statements. So don't fall victim to that.
Lennox, over 20 years now, over 20 years, the citizens of this country asking national security. We giving them with money. It's not them, the mother and father give them no money. They're using taxpayers' money. We saying we want all the officers and them with body cam. When you're approaching a citizen, you must just put on your body cam here, pops one time. When you're in a van, you don't want to put on, you have a dash cam and your van. You know, over 20 years now, we cannot have the police and them who doing blocks and villages and them who doing them kind of investigation and raiding blocks on them. Make sure you have your body cam on and you have a body cam. We can't get that yet. Why? Why?
Because I suspect, having regard to my own experience and observations in places like Lavatil and so on, they do not want to account. So there's a pushback, because the cameras would be objective evidence as to their conduct. They believe,
as to the misconduct in public office.
Yes, they believe that the population, knowing that, or the places that they would want to be or exhibiting this brutal behavior, will have a mechanism when it is scrutinized before the relevant judicial entity will see them in a light that they don't want the population to know that it is that widespread. That is the reason why.
And that is what
yeah, but
the head of National Security Council have to fix it.
That's right. And more than that, but little do they understand that that is a protection for them. Because if the action that would have been taken by the police can be justified by some objective mechanism, which of course in this case is the camera, they are exonerated, they are absolved. Because if a person is aggressive in spite of the caution, in spite of, and your life is in danger, then the action that you would have taken and the recording thereof certainly will make sure that you don't have to account by elaborate records writing, or indeed as it appears with respect, of course, to the Joshua police involved killing. Because it's only after the video came out you saw where they had to engage in all kinds of elaborate excuses, about 3, 4, 5 excuses coming down the road with respect. But of course, that is sub judice. I don't want to focus on it too much. The courts will decide, because they will have to disclose what they have to the defense, and the defense will have to disclose what they have as well, as the process focuses and continues. So I don't want to go too much into it. But
Nadia,
once again,
Nadia,
I don't
want
to lose the focus that our international image is being further tarnished by incidents like these, and the Commissioner of Police, the National Security Council, the Homeland Security, and of course the external ones as well, in terms of the ministries. All stakeholders must be able to be conscious enough not to cause this situation to be so expansive that international action is taken against Trinidad and Tobago to our overall detriment. That's the point we are making here by raising these issues tonight. COP?
Let me say good night to Nadia, and good night to Jay and Matilda, good night to you. Ramuta, good night to you. Thanks for being tight for locking on. Speedy Gonzal, good night to you. Thanks for being part of the program. Okay, Brian Ramdio, good night to you.
Great.
Good night to all the listeners.
Yes, man. All right, let's play that piece again for those who just joined us. We unfortunately we don't have the benefit of calls tonight. I know that people are calling profusely, but the phone isn't charging as quickly as we would like, or should I say, by the time it charged, we would have run out of time. So let's play this, and then of course we will make our departure thereafter by giving our closing remarks. So here is what gave rise to tonight's discussion.
CAFRA calls for end to actions against Alyssa Phillip. By activist Alyssa Phillip and her mother Camille Carrasquero arrested during Labor Day celebrations in Fezzabad last Friday. Social media. The Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action Trinidad and Tobago, CAFRA-TT, has expressed concern over the arrest of activist Alyssa Phillip during Labor Day celebrations in Fezzabad, describing the incident as a troubling development for freedom of expression and assembly. In a media release issued on Saturday, CAFRA-TT said it was deeply alarmed by events that unfolded during this year's Labor Day activities, a day it described as one traditionally dedicated to honoring workers' struggles for dignity, fair working conditions, and recognition of their contributions to national development. The organization said Labor Day has historically provided a platform for citizens to protest, assemble publicly, and call for accountability from the state. CAFRA-TT said women's organizations have participated in the annual Fezzabad March for years because they view labor justice as closely linked to peace, equality, and equitable development. The group also raised concerns over reports that some people were prevented from joining the march because they were not trade union members. On what legal basis were citizens prevented from walking on a public street during a public march? And why now? The organization asked. CAFRA-TT said the reports raised serious questions and suggested the possibility of targeted reprisal. The organization also pointed to a video circulating on social media that appeared to show more than 20 police officers in riot gear surrounding and detaining 2 women during the celebrations. CAFRA-TT questioned the level of force used and said both women were unarmed and exercising their constitutional rights. This is not the first time that Alyssa Phillip has been arrested, and we note that each of her arrests has been linked to her calls for police transparency, accountability, and access to justice, the organization said. CAFRA-TT argued that the incident could be viewed as an attempt to intimidate not only Phillip but also others who question the effectiveness or accountability of the police service. The organization praised Phillip and her mother for what it described as their courage and commitment to justice. Today we call on the state to end its punitive actions against Alyssa Phillip. We make this call not only for her but for all of us who live in Trinidad and Tobago and who understand that down this road, the road of unchecked power and the suppression of dissent, is a threat to our rule of law and democracy, CAFRA-TT said. The organization added that Labor Day should serve as a reminder of the importance of collective action and the need to protect citizens' rights. CAFR TT is the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, a regional non-profit organization that promotes social justice and the empowerment of women.
Yesterday, people, of course, we highlighted a report coming out of the UK. Again, negative for Trinidad and Tobago, talking about 186 gangs and responsible for over 1,700 murders in the country. And that is conditioning and serving to fashion the visa policy of the United Kingdom. Before that development, we didn't have to have a visa to go to the United Kingdom. We were part of the Commonwealth of Nations. Now we have to, but that has been imposed because of the way that it has been abused by criminal elements that are seeking refuge in that country. We have another regional report now of this CAFA, yes, organization, a feminist organization doing research, etc., and looking at women development. But I will not be surprised if the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights come into play. I will not be surprised if the United Nations Agency for Human Rights come into play. I will not be surprised if this continues, and with the intensity under and the implementation of SOE, which of course this will now be unintended consequences, because I'm sure the government doesn't want this kind of publicity or this kind of action or this kind of development taking place, because it is about trying to suppress the criminal elements. But unfortunately, innocent persons, when they get caught up in it, have a right to respond, and when they respond, it contributes to the international concern about Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore opportunities may well go a-begging. Go ahead, my friend.
Lennox and listeners and viewers of the Corridor Transformation, when you can have international organization whose responsibility is to secure human rights and ensure that people's rights was not violated, when these organizations can recognize in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago 2 young girls' rights was taken away from them, that shows sadness in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This matter in court, but that shows sadness when international organization, their responsibility is to protect human rights and stand up for the needy, especially when they're getting abused from their country, because that's the responsibility they have. When citizens get abused from their country, they stand up for them. When law infringing on people's rights, they stand up for them and win the matters in court for them, win money for them. When these organizations and them recognize this taking place in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, it breaks the confidence of the 14-year-old boy, the 15-year-old girl. The future of the country will recognize what taking place. People's rights have been infringed. That is what they do. They bring a downgrade on the country by doing that. All the law have to do is to follow the law of the land, and things will be good. The only time people's rights will be infringed is when lawmakers break the law.
Yeah, and of course we want to leave you with this, that it is not that the police doesn't know. They would have had training at tremendous expense of the state, and a budget that.
But I feel many of the police
always
officers
1,
don't
2,
know the
3,
law.
1, 2, 3, always in the first 3. They have a budget of billions of dollars. So they have the resources and they're being paid to do the right thing. And when that is infringed, it means therefore it is either deliberate, that people are reckless, or they didn't learn well, or your recruitment mechanism or process may be so flawed that you are getting persons who would come out of all that training and expenditure and still do the wrong thing. But I want to say this. Having said what I just said, they know what to do, because the Hadid recent arrest in an SOE tells the world that they know what to do, because they didn't have to go there with a warrant secured from the courts of the land, because the SOE,
They know how to go with that. They know how to go with that following a SOE.
they sort it. So I'm saying that even when there is an SOE, they have to be even extra
But
careful.
if they want to come by
Extra
me,
careful.
they don't. If they want to come by me, they'll just drive in by me and
That's
break
what
down my
I'm saying.
door.
And I'm saying that based on that, a SOE would give them, the onus is on them to be extra careful, even more careful, because they don't have the scrutiny of an objective adjudicating mechanism or system. I'm talking about the courts. All right, people. So I think we have come to the end of this particular session. But of course, I know that a lot of people are going to be asking questions subsequently. Our apology for not having the telephone intact tonight. But I know that people would not have missed much, because some of the things you would have said, probably we would have said it for you. But that being as it may, have a wonderful rest of the night, and God bless. COP, your closing remarks?
Children and Tobago, think positive and don't be negative. Be cool, calm, and collective. Set goals in life. Mothers and fathers out there, we have too much reckless children. Take responsibility. Take responsibility and ensure your children and them do what they're supposed to do as young children growing up, so that they'll be much more responsible when they become elders. You mothers and fathers, especially in the East-West corridor, for over 45 years, I have been hearing 95% black and 5% white in jail. Always stop that. Stop that. It's not supposed to have 95% black and 5% alone white in jail. Stop your children and them from going in jail. Bring them up the right way. Do the right things. Police officers hold mothers and fathers accountable for misleading the children and them. And I will support that. Children and Tobago, have a good night. Have a good night. And all the listeners and viewers of the Corridor Transformation, thank you.
Yes, indeed. Of course, once again, our apology for not having the telephone part of the program tonight. But of
Let
course,
one of them buy one. Let one of them buy one now. Let one of them buy one and send it now.
that was due to circumstances beyond our control. Don't forget,
Let
of course,
one of them buy a good one and send it.
I'm sure somebody is listening. So we can have two instead of one. So I don't have to depend on
Florida.
one. Because when one is unavoidably, let's say, out of service, we can get the other one to use. Hoping that they put the other one to charge. But that being as it may, don't forget tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy and myself, as we continue with these and other issues. Have a wonderful rest of the night. Our apology for being a bit tardy tonight as well. But of course, circumstances, technology, etc. And I love to say Murphy's Law, when something has to go wrong, it will at the worst possible time. But next week, I'm sure we will be back up and running. And don't forget to stay tuned and keep connected, because we may have a weekend program. We'll see how that works out, because we are simply committed to the development of Trinidad and Tobago as true patriots. Have a wonderful one. Bye-bye.
You keep it on, I will keep my money.
You want to help to mind your family. You want to help your man financially. But nowadays,
Good night to you, Faizabad. Good night to you, Faizabad.
You're looking out to find something to do. You meet a boss man who promised to help you.
KFC, good night to
But when
you.
the man lay down the
KFC, good night to you.
nothing
Anderson,
else
good
but
night to you.
fuel
Anderson, good night to you.
You want